Hello there! I'm Nathan Wildman and welcome to the Lecture Zero video for Introduction to Logic. The aim of this video is really just to tell you a little bit about the pragmatics for the course, to lay out some of the means of assessment, and really just sort of cover whatever overview material we need to do. Nothing wild and crazy, just to give you a chance to familiarize yourself. So I thought I would start by telling you what the course learning goals. I'm not going to read all 6 of these. You can take your time and see them on the course syllabus. But the broad idea is that in this course, we're going to primarily be focused on learning 2 formal languages. These are languages specifically developed to help us understand and process a notion of validity. More on that in the very first lecture. Broadly speaking, what we're going to do is work on how to express ourselves in these formal languages, so the syntax of them, the kind of grammar, and then also on the semantics, that is, setting the truth conditions. When are sentences in this language true or false? And from there, we're going to build up to effectively a whole formal logical system. So that's the rough and ready plan, and by the end of it, you'll learn how to use these 2 languages. You'll be fluent, as it were. So that's the kind of course learning goals. The course materials are very simple. We have a textbook, which is a book called For All X Cambridge. This is open source, so the PDF is on the website. You can also download it from my friend Tim Button's website, but note that we're using the 2018 edition. That is the one that's on the Canvas page. As well as this textbook, we also have a solutions book, which has, as the name suggests, solutions for all the practice exercises. You'll need the solutions book in order to complete the homework assignments, but more on that in a second. Now, what I'll do each week is there'll be some reading from the textbook. This usually isn't terribly much. Sometimes it's only just 10 to 15 pages. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. Most of the time, though, this is really just material to kind of teach you various parts of our languages. What I'd like you to do is please read the assigned material before the relevant lecture. Now, what I'm going to do in the lectures is actually kind of go through and spell out in my own terms what the content of this reading was, but it's always useful to have multiple kind of angles and multiple presentations, because sometimes this stuff can be kind of hard. Notably, all of this material will be on the course's Canvas page, which, if you're watching this video, you've already found. So, hey, we're doing okay. So that's really the materials. Now, how are we going to kind of do it practicality-wise? Well, there's going to be in-person lectures, which will be recorded and uploaded to the Canvas page. I'm going to upload them both to YouTube and to Panopto, which is the kind of integrated web page on Canvas. I personally find Panopto pretty clunky, whereas YouTube is extremely easy, so that's why I'll upload them to both. These lectures are usually about an hour and 30 minutes long, with a small break in the middle, or depending on how people go during the day, we might end a little bit early and skip the break. Now, again, these are in person. It's very good if you can come. They tend to be on Tuesdays. I think our first one is Tuesday morning, but most of the time they're going to be on Tuesday afternoons. Every once in a while they get moved to Mondays. As well as these lectures, there's also in-person tutorial groups. If I recall correctly, there's 5 tutorial groups for these. They've decided in their absolute joy to stack them all up on Thursday and Friday mornings. Now, importantly, because there's 5 groups, I'm going to ask you to please check your timetable, which is it's literally my timetable, the website. There's a link on the Canvas page to see which group you're in, to find out what room it is, to find out exactly the time and things like this. The aim of the lectures will be to deliver content to you, right? Again, it'll be me kind of talking about how to do various things, how to understand the languages, stepwise progression. What we'll do in the tutorials is work through problem sets. If I'm really honest with you, the tutorials are where the real work gets done. Because, to be really fair, logic is something in between maths and learning a language. And in both of those cases, as someone who's still desperately working on his Dutch knows, in order to do maths or to learn your language, you need to constantly do work at it. Work every week. And that's effectively what we do in the tutorials. We work through problem sets. Specifically, we work through the homework problem sets. So, good reason to come to the tutorials is if you come along, we'll do most of the homework that you have to do for the next week. Let me stress, though, in both the lecture and tutorial cases, attendance is strongly recommended, but is not mandatory. I am not going to be checking on your attendance. I'm not going to keep track of anything. Come if you find it helpful. If you don't, find most efficient uses of your time. So, of course, all of that being said, you're probably more interested in how does your grade get determined. So this course, there's 3 means of assessment. There are homework assignments, which are due weekly. There's a midterm exam, and there's a final exam. You should note that these different means of assessment are all worth points. The homework assignments are worth a maximum of 20 points. The midterm is worth 40 points, and the final exam is worth 40 points. Your overall grade is going to be determined by your total score, so assignments plus midterm score plus final exam score, divided out of 100. Right. Specifically, what I'm going to do is take the sum of your 3 means of assessment, divide by 10, and that's going to give me your grade number, which I'll round to the nearest 0.5. So what this means is to pass the class, you need to score greater than or equal to 55 points. Notably, I do not care where these points come from. That is, there's no minimum score for any mode of assessment. You can get a perfect score on the midterm exam, do all the homework, get a 0 on the final, and still pass this class. Conversely, you can do all the homework, get a 20 out of 40 on the midterm, and a 20 out of 40 on the final. That's 60 points. That's a pass. Of course, I want you to do more than pass. I hope you want to do more than pass, but it's always good to know what the minimum is. So let's talk about each of these different means of assessment in a little bit more detail. The first one is the homework assignments. Homework assignments, again, are due weekly. You'll note that there isn't one for week 1 because I'm not a jerk, but there is one for week 2. And then 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and you see the idea. Right. Assignments are actually problem sets from the textbook. Notably, you also have the solutions to these problem sets. That's why they need the solution book. Right. Now, what I want you to do is not just do the homework questions, but actually self-correct them. That means that when you submit your homework, what you're really going to submit to me is your answers, and you'll double check them against the answers in the solution book. Now, each individual homework assignment is worth a score of 0, 1, or 2. Right? If it's 0, that's just because you didn't do it at all. Right? You submitted nothing. It's a 1 if you did some of the questions, but not all. Or if you did all the questions, but you didn't self-correct. And it's a 2 if you do all the questions and you self-correct. Hey! Now, the motivation for this self-correctingness is actually because, to be quite frank, given the size of the course, it's very difficult for me to be able to go through all of the homework each week and pinpoint where it is that you in particular are struggling or finding difficult. So by getting you to do the self-correcting, I'm basically hoping that you'll figure out exactly where your weaknesses lie, figure out the questions that you're struggling with, and then we can talk about those either in the lectures or in the tutorial groups. Now, notably for these, homework assignments will be submitted via Canvas assignments. You'll see this in the Canvas page. You can type them out and enter them in the rich text box, or you can write them by hand, take a picture, and upload the picture. As a suggestion, I suggest getting used to handwriting and doing the picture file upload method, only because the exams will be all handwritten. And it's good to kind of get in the habit of doing the sort of thing that you'll be doing on the exams. So that's the homework assignments. In total, I believe there's 13 assignments. You'll note that you can get a max of 20 points in the homework. So what I will actually do is just take your scores for your top 10 assignments. So if you do all the homework, right, great, good for you. You still only get 20 points. But if you do only 10 of the 13 homework assignments and get full points in those 10, cool, you still get your max 20 points. So there's some wiggle room if, 1 week you're a bit busy, or you didn't get to finish it, or you just didn't have the time to do it at all. So that's kind of nice. Now, let's talk about the exams. The exams are going to be on various dates. I need to tell you those later. The midterm exam is on the material in the first 7 lectures, and the final exam is just on the material in the second block of lectures, so lectures 8 through 13. Notably, the exam questions are going to be of similar types as the sort of things we do in the homework assignments. And I'll put out some sample exams, some practice exams the week before, so you get some sense. In fact, I'll even make some available once the Canvas page is open. But more on these as they come. Notably here, each exam, so the midterm and the final, are both 2 hours long. The midterm has, I think, approximately 30-ish questions. The final has about 24. I've timed it out so that 2 hours should be more than enough time, even if you're going very slow and very methodically. But of course, if you have issues or anything, let me know and we can figure out how to go. I've also included a link here to a little video about cheating. Note that one way you could do this course, of course, is just to, hey, copy down the answers and the homework. That's perfectly fine with me because that's just going to come back to bite you when it's time to do the exams. As I mentioned, the exams are in person. They're on paper, handwritten. This also means, this is why I can't tell you the dates yet, because we're still waiting for the exam people to tell me the exact times and dates and things. But once I know that, I will let you know. So that's broadly assessment. Homework, midterm, final. Note that there will be resets on all of these. You can resit homework. You can resubmit it for full points up until the resit deadline day of the final exam. There'll be a resit for the midterm. There will be a resit for the final as well. The format for those will be identical to their initial versions. So what are we going to talk about? Well, I already said that really the kind of aim for this course is to teach you 2 formal languages. So the first 7 weeks, basically all the stuff that's going to take us up to the midterm, is going to be working on the syntax and semantics of these 2 languages. And our first language we'll call truth functional logic. Now this is sort of a stepping stone. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but it's also a very limited tool. It's a little bit like a sledgehammer. It's really good for some things, but it's less good if you want to do something a little more fine-grained. But we need to start with it, because once we have truth functional logic and mastered it, we can move on to our second language, which is first-order logic. So the first 7 weeks we'll be talking about the syntax, the kind of grammar for these languages, and also figuring out when sentences in these languages are true or false. And that's really what we're going to do for the first half of the course. In the second half of the course, we're going to continue to build on what we've learned. Notably, though, again, the midterm will just be on the first 7 weeks. The final exam is on the second 7 weeks. And what we'll do here, we're going to start week 8 with a little hangover cure, because it's always difficult the week after the midterms. So we'll come back and we'll talk about the very fundamentals of set theory. And this is really just because I think it's important that you know how some of this stuff works. You're familiar with the notation for when you run into these sort of things later. Then in weeks 9 through 12, we're going to work on the big thing for the second half of the course, which is extending our tools with truth functional and first order logic by talking about natural deduction systems. These are proof systems where we can actually construct formal proofs to demonstrate various logical claims or logical relations. More on this when we get to it. And then finally, the last kind of proper week of material, we'll kind of return back to some additional formal tools, and I'll tell you a little bit about the nature of relations and talk about extensional adequacy. And here what we're really going to be focusing on is sort of meta logic, thinking about logical systems in a broader sense. So this will be a little bit of fun before we kind of roll into the final exam. This is really the plan. It's super fun material. I absolutely love teaching this stuff. It's so much fun, and I really hope that you enjoy it. I should stress, though, first thing, before we get going, it's super fun, but of course, if you have any accessibility issues, let me know ASAP. I'm very happy to try and figure out ways to make things work. I don't want this to be a struggle. I want this to be an actual useful learning experience. Related to that, I want to say, look, formal logic is hard. It can be really hard, but don't be discouraged, right? We're in this together. Feel free, if you have questions, shoot me an email. You can message me on Canvas using the kind of integrated email service. Right? I am happy to answer questions. If you're struggling, come to the tutorials. We will talk about stuff. We'll work through additional problems. Like, I'm happy to talk about this because I love it. I mean, I'm still amazed they're paying me to do this because it's so much fun. So as well as being hard, logic is also fun and can be incredibly rewarding if you're willing to put the work in. So yeah, I guess really the important thing here is I want to be encouraging. I want you to know that while this stuff it can be quite difficult and can be a slog in some ways, the joy is there if you want to reach out and take it. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to do here. Again, tell you a little bit about the nature of the course and practicalities, some admin issues. Notably, that's the end really of this introductory lecture. What we'll do next is have our first actual lecture. The topics that we're going to cover in that first lecture, in lecture 1, is starting by talking a little bit about what exactly logic is and why study it. So this will be me giving you a little bit of like a sales pitch on the course, if you like. Then we'll introduce the real deep, dark core notion that we're after, which is this concept of validity. I mentioned it earlier, but we're going to kind of define it and characterize why it's so important. And then we'll wrap up the lecture by talking about basic notions of symbolization. This is really the kind of foundational move for the 2 formal languages we'll go to study. So, in preparation for this first lecture, I ask that you read the first 13 pages of the textbook. It's really just kind of covering these 3 points that I've got here. And note that our first lecture is on Tuesday, 27th of August from 10:45 to 12:30 in MK1, which is the new building. It looks very fancy. I haven't even been in it yet, so it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you on the morning of the 27th. Bye.